There we go. So it's actually the center drill bit wasn't drilling at all, and it ended up pushing it into the unit itself, which is fine because in a drill press you don't need it to be centered. It's working itself. Okay, so we got the center hole drilled out with our hole saw. Came out nice. Slow that down there a little bit. There we go. So obviously we went way too big on the center hole. Well, that's not really going to affect us any. Just we didn't need to do that. Yeah, we can find a few bolts and bolt this thing in and see how it's going to work. I just grabbed some random hardware. It's not the stuff I'm going to use. It just worked good for mock-up. There we go. Now these. So yeah, they're going to sit in here like this, and they're going to get if this try to find something to mock this up. Okay. Let's see if we can get this to stay here for mock-up purposes. So if this was sitting in there like that, that was welded there. And we have our cables mounted here to little brackets, and they're hooked to here. When you pull on this, it's going to push that in to go down. Just a simple thing there. So there's actually two brake lines because they went to different wheels. I guess it'd be like this. They're different lengths. That won't really bug us much. They have the same exact pole. They'll just be kind of routed. One will be a little bit longer sitting inside there. So it won't really do anything. I'm going to put the master cylinder, I think, over on that other side. But we got to figure out here how much pull we're going to have. So okay, so from this backing plate here, the center of the pin is 3 1/4. Let's release the parking brake. Four and a quarter. Okay. 1 inch. So now we got to figure out .3 inch to the top. Now the full stroke of this is 3/4 inch. On hydraulic brakes, you're never going to use the full stroke, so we're probably going to use, like, let's say, 1/4 inch. Well, that was a full. Let's go 1/2 inch to the 1 inch. So we need a 2 times ratio. That for every 1 inch of travel here, it's going to push in 1/2 inch on here. We're probably not going to use the full 1/2 inch here, so we're probably not going to use the full 1 inch of cable pull over there, which is perfect. I'm hoping to have about 1/4 inch travel on these, and that would put us at, say, 1/2 inch of travel on those cables. Gives us some adjustment and things working properly. Okay, I made up these little brackets. Just took a piece of angle iron, drilled a 1/2 inch hole, took the portaband and cut a little notch in there. That's the way the original ones are. That way you can pull back the rubber sheathing a little bit, slide this over the cable, and then this locks into that the end of the sheathing, I guess, and then you can put in the retainer clip. So now we just got to figure out where to put these in relation to these. So I made the measurement, the distance from the back side of here, or whichever way this is going to face, to the end of, basically the end of the clip that's on this one, is on the cable, is 4 1/4 inches. And the distance from here is 2 3/4, which is basically from the, well, yeah, 2 3/4, that's from the, that'd be from the center line. So if we're gonna make these match, let's see here. It's almost 1.5 inches. Look at that. Okay, so if this is going to stick out here like this, two and 7/8. Well, here, let's just I do have a little bit here. I can, so these are adjustable. I'm going to crank them out a little bit since we might be running into those brackets, would be almost be hanging off. So let's back these, make these just a little bit longer. And you never want to max out your adjustment while you're still making something, because you're going to end up in a bad spot really quick. Yeah, well, now we're at 3. The other one was 4 1/4, so that would basically put us right at this back edge of going like that. And that cable would come all the way through. The cable length and this length would be straight then, so you'd have the best angles, and then this would be locked and this would pull in, which would push that in while pulling that in. Now the one other thing that we have to do is, these are a touch wider together. This is at the same spacing. And you can see how much wider it is. So we need to get it, they'd almost be touching to really do it properly. Let me think on this. There might be the thing that we have to take another piece of angle iron and basically make it like this, with the 2 holes drilled much closer together, basically drilled like that. And we'll cut in from the sides or down for the bracket instead of making 2 individual brackets. We're probably gonna have to make 1 bracket to get them close enough. I'm afraid that if I cut these close enough to actually just make it, it would get kind of thin on here, and even though we're gonna weld it back together, it would just it wouldn't be worth it. So I think we're going to drill another piece of steel, cut the notches, and we'll work from there. Yeah. Now, if only we had a plasma cutter, we'd just cut it out real quick, or an arc droid or something. But we will figure it out, and I'll get this made up, and then I'll get back with you. So I got this piece that I drilled these 2 holes in, set up in the vise here. Use the Portaband to cut the slots, and also I got it marked off where to cut this out. I got to make up the table sometime to mount this thing in, so I can use it just as a bandsaw, because it'd be way easier just to push it in, but it works out pretty slick overall. My 2 slots. I didn't do a fantastic job with the vise being right there. I kind of got a little off on there, but I'll clean that up with the grinder. But there's our bracket. And if we happen to put this thing on there like so, we are at 4 1/4 inches from this plate to this pin. So that would be the exact same length in a resting position. So I think what we're going to set that up for is to get that on there. You might worry about these coming off, but these are banjo fittings for brakes, which, now just thinking about it, I got to find some banjo fittings to go on here. I didn't even look at that earlier. But these are going to come off the side, so it won't really be a major concern. But yeah, we got to figure out some brake banjo fittings of the golf cart persuasion. Well, I'm going to clean this all up, and we'll weld it up, and then we can start figuring out our bracket that's going to go in between the two, whether or not it's going to be these or something similar to this. These are pretty nice, but the holes are way too big and kind of defeat the purpose of it. So I think we'll try to find something similar to this to mount in here. And then we got to figure out our pivot point that is going to be down here of what we're going to mount. I'd like to find a piece of square stock or something like this. This is just a touch too wide to put down here just as a post in between them, and they can just go like this. But we might just use that and let it float a little bit, and it doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. So clean it up. So I got this cleaned up, so we got fresh metal, clamped it in place real quick, so let's just give it some weld. There. One more piece in the puzzle. Like I said, now all we need is run those through there. We just need to figure out a center or some bars. Now I have seen this done where they did a single bar instead of two individual bars. I kind of like the idea of the single bar. That way, no matter which way everything's going, it's not going to try to give front brakes or rear brakes more power than one of the other ones, but we'll see. So all we got to do is go from here to here, and as long as we're in the middle, this distance will be twice as much as this distance, I think. I'll have to do some math. And it's not exactly I figured it out, but it's usually the very rudimentary way of doing things. So as we can draw it out right here. Okay, if this is our pivot point, and this is a 5-inch, so it's a 5-inch swing. So now if we put the hole in the center at 2.5 inches, and again in the same plane at 2.5 inches, these are our travels. I mean, these obviously are exaggerated, but we get the idea. Never be afraid to draw on your benches. So, if we had this much swing off of this long of a rod, this would be 2.25 from straight to this much turn, and this is 1 1/8 inches. So that is half. So to get half the swing, we have the distance. That will work good. So I don't know if I'm going to use these. This is just some scrap iron that I had sitting around that worked good for the purpose that I had in the moment. But yeah, so I do have to go get or make up some cable clamps for those axles, or for those cables, that they can go through, and then, for instance, can get welded down here. They can go through, have the pin slid through them, and then they're held in place there, and the rods, the cable then can pull on it like this. Once we have that, we can start to play with this too, because we'll have where those are mounted, where they're pulling from, and then where these are mounted, and then that will give us the distance of this. So even if they're pulling, let's say off of these, they're pulling right here, this distance is approximately 2.25. So we'd go 2.25 up to here. That would be our hole. There'd be another bracket right here that would hold it, and we'd have the halfway mark. So I'm going to try to grab some stuff and figure out what we're going to use for some materials. Got my bracket welded on, and now it's just kind of mounted to the bench here, so I have a flat surface instead of trying to work at a weird angle. So now I drilled a hole back here. So what I did is I took, I had 2 of these plates, I cut one in half because it ended up being about the right thickness. I just have a bolt in here for time being. Drilled a hole for 3/8 back here on all 3 of them. And then here's going to be this pivot point. So it could go like this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to sandwich them, I think, like this. So it'll be 1 bar going through all, I don't know if you can see that, 1 bar going through all of them. There's kind of a, obviously sloppy, but there. And then that will push on, as this goes in, it'll push on both of them at the same time. And then put 1 through here. In those cables, it's a much bigger pin. And this will give me a little bit, because pulling on that, it'll give it a little bit of movement, so it doesn't ever bind up. Or that's the thought. We'll see if it happens. Obviously, with it being what it is, this is just a piece of bar stock. If I don't like the way that this is, or whatever else, it's pretty easy to go buy another chunk of bar stock and unbolt this one, put it back in. Also, if I need to, I can put these, I can take this off, make 2 of them, put them on the outside here with the bolt going through, and then there would be centered out here, which would be just fine. It would work. Covering all my bases. So what I'm doing is I know my spacing back and forth for where everything's going to sit as far as spacing forward and backwards. So I'm able to measure that, and then for setting the squareness, I'm just leaving this blade in between everything. And when it's happy in between everything, it must be happy. There, got those things squared up and resting nicely. Check my measurement here one more time. 2.5, it is. Let's put some weld on it. That's a good tack. Let me see if I can find a long screw that'll line up better with this. Perfect. So I found a really long screw, but that'll be just fine. So in theory, there we go. These in there like that. Perfect operation. I like it. And then those things will come up through here with a pin all the way through it, just like this one. that'll bolt all that together. So that'll pull, and then we'll cut this off, and then we just gotta figure out how to mount this. So I'm gonna burn these in deeper. That on there right now. I don't think it's going anywhere. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Yeah, I think I'm going to fight the Portaband and see if that's going to cut through this nicely. And then we will come back for trying to figure out mock-up in the where we're going to mount this thing. Yeah, I'm going to leave that. So we got our back bracket kind of cleaned up here and made smaller, not so big and clunky. This is just a piece of pipe that fits at about the right height for us to put it in and mount it off the frame, just to bring it up so it'll sit like this. Master cylinder here, and those cables will come through and pull on everything, and we'll be good to go. So I just need to weld this to this, then I can show you how it's going to sit in the unit itself. So just got to get this tacked on here. Doesn't have to be perfect, but we want it nice. So technically, if we have this bar down flat on there and it's square, then this should be square to the table too. Let's try it off on this side. There we go. Not too shabby. Okay, hopefully this works out well enough that you guys can see what I'm doing here. So I just want this to mount in here. Don't touch things. Mount in here basically just like this. Battery might have to be slid back a little bit, which is no big deal. And it's also give us some spots to mount things, but I have a pretty good spot that I can weld it on right onto this base here. And we are good to go. Cables will come across out of the way of everything. Just move just like that. Just weld it on good and strong. Now there won't be really any forces on this because it's pulling off of itself. So it's just trying to squeeze itself, so it's not like it's trying to tweak it one way or the other. So as long as it doesn't vibrate loose, we should be good. We might still add an extra piece on this side. I don't know if you guys can see it over here on this front side down as well, just to make sure that we're good and stable. But let's clean up that surface and get this tacked in there. And there we go. Tacked good enough. There's a little spring on these cables themselves too. That is adding to the complexity. There we go. One. Pop the clip off here. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking for that. I might move this fuel line to the other side or something once we get in there. Okay, we got that in. I got the cables in. I'm just going to kind of quick pop this master cylinder into its home. Kind of making a liar out of me, just for the simple fact that those the banjo fittings on the bottom are kind of getting in the way of everything else. There we go. Okay, we threw some more weld on this. Got this mounted in there pretty good and strong. I moved the fuel line so they're together. All we gotta do is put all these clamps on. Like I said, this is just gonna go through there like that. It's got a nylock I'll have to get a wrench for. You guys are kind of sitting on the seat, but kind of one of those funny little things that happens is the seat, when it tilts forward, ooh, went for a ride. Hopefully you guys can still see over here too. The seat kind of sits on the brake pedal when it's sitting forward, so we have to pull the seat up a little bit here to pull out on this. There we go. Okay, so everything's installed. You guys watch it. I am going to see, I'm going to push on the brake pedal. You tell me whether or not it's working. And see the top of it moving. I think we might have a winner. Now, as long as all of our math is right and the amount of brake pedal and everything that is needed is good, but we should be good. The only thing I have to do is lock everything down, and like I said, I need to get those banjo adapters and some brake lines, and then we're good. Okay, we ran to town. We got some brake lines. I got a nice long chunk of it that I was going to try to use, but it's 3/16, but it has metric nuts on it, so, or metric threads, so that's not going to work. But what I did find is I found these handy dandy little brake lines that is banjo fitting on there and flare for 3/16 standard on this end. So I can, and it happens to be the right for a full banjo connection. I already got the one in installed. I also removed the factory brake lever or brake master cylinder that came with the wheeler, and I just rerouted the line right here down. So yeah, we're gonna come down here, we'll route this around, and then we'll hook up to this up here, just like it was meant to be. You can see here, you got your two lines, and then we got our one line already in, and we're gonna put the other one right here. The other thing that I did is, because this was set up to have like dual front brakes and single rear brake, it doesn't matter, it's the same both ways. But with this extra port, I just took a chunk of aluminum and drilled a hole through it the correct size for the banjo fitting, and polished the surfaces, put the washers in there, and bolted that down, so that's sealing that fitting tight. Now we'll run this one over to here, and I gotta either take another piece of loose, and make my own, or I just gotta flare this. So I just gotta find my flare kit. But yeah, you can see here's our lever, and the way that these pull like this, that operates that. And here's the factory mechanism here. This is all brake. So this is the brake pedal goes up there, pulls on these cables here. While we're outside, we have something that resembles brakes. I had one broken brake line in the front, so I have to order a new one. I just crimped it off, and so far we got it, but like I said, they're not great brakes, but we do have them. I got my handy dandy vice grip shifter for right now. So yeah, you'll have to let me know what you guys think. I gotta do something about the shifter. I mean, this works, but it's kind of weird bending over to shift your gears all the time. We'll have to play with the brakes a little bit. Might just be an adjustment. That line would help a lot too. So we'll get that done. It's a little hot behind your back unless you're moving, but that's kind of a minor problem. But yeah, it moves out. Later on when I get it dialed in a little bit better, we'll get out the Speedo app on a phone or something and see how fast she goes, because it moves right along. That's why I do believe that we want a roll cage. If we ever took this thing on the city streets, it's probably not that bad, but if we ever took this thing on a trail, it could get squirrely in a hurry, and definitely need to have something to protect people. And if we do it right and we put the Easy Go cover on it, the normal golf cart lid, it would make it even more of a sleeper. So I'll get to editing this and put it out there for you guys. Hope you guys like it. Thanks.